enjoy yourself after your time up there in two, four. Psst, James. All right, people. Listen, one, no. They're only one. They're only one. Okay, that's it. Husband and wife, they're one, all right? Let's have a word of prayer and we'll start tonight. Want to give him one? Good on you. Loving Father, we thank you for this gathering tonight. We ask your blessings as we continue in the study of geography and customs. In Jesus' name we ask, amen. Let me proceed by just emphasising what we mentioned last week, that next week will be the last time we have our classes for this year. Come back in February, and in February we're going to discuss exactly time. We'll have this class again because it's not really fitting Will on the Wednesday after Bible study, after prayer meeting. It's not. So best give it a time of its own. So think about possible times. As always, I appreciate if we do it in cooperation with another time of ministering. So it could be a Friday night, it could be a Sunday morning before church starts, Sunday afternoon before church starts, something like that. But just consider mainly times we're going to be here anyway, because people are busy. They don't have time to make an extra night to do something, all right? So think about that. And also, we're going through geography. Customs is an optional extra. If you don't want customs, I'll give it a miss. Just do geography and we'll finish it sooner. It's up to yourself. So I decided at college I'm only going to teach the geography side because they've got a customs course there already. So I'll major on geography and I'll do a portion on archaeology and just do what they're not doing out there anyway. So just think about that. Okay, so next week, as usual, will be our last session and then we're off until February. All right? Okay, tonight there's two things. Very briefly about the divided kingdom and second thing regarding grain production in the Middle East. Now with the divided kingdom, you look over there and you see a map in your notes. Keep your eyes on the map, not in the notes, all right? This part over here, just keep your eyes on that map. And as I speak, just look at the map all the time, okay? What we have over here first is the area of Syria, which is in the Hebrew Aram. Now, right-hand side, up the top corner, that's Syria. You see those dotted lines over there, shows you the border. We have Phoenicia on the coast over there. And Israel used to have all the land bordering Phoenicia, going up there past Damascus, up to the Euphrates River. That's where the land was reached to the time of David and time of Solomon. And then you find that after Solomon, the kingdom divided, it became weaker, and they lost all that land from this area over here, which is just east of Damascus. They lost all that land over there, and it went back to Syria, okay? And the land of Bashan, which was the kingdom of Og, they went to Syria also. So Syria, that's one of the main countries over there. Their north went to the Euphrates River, to the east went all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, and on the west to the Arabian Desert, and that's their land. In the time of David, they were subjugated properly, and they gave gifts to David. Time of Solomon, they gave gifts to Solomon. God made sure there was no enemy threat from those people. But as soon as the kingdom divided, that's when you find Israel's strength started to weaken. And so that's Syria. And then we have under that Israel. Now if you notice Israel over here in the centre, it goes all the way to the Mediterranean Sea on the east. On the west, it goes across the Jordan River to the land of Gilead. Now Gilead, that's the place where Gad inherited. We looked before about the different tribes of Israel where they inherited, and that's where Gad inherited over there. And to the south there was Reuben. So the land of Reuben, land of Gad, and not half tribe of Manasseh. So that was theirs. And only until the top of the Dead Sea, north of Dead Sea, going east toward the Mediterranean, and they never had any portion of Phoenicia, but they had just north of the Sea of Galilee. That's where the very top portion is where the Dan is, or the second part of Dan is over there. So that's the land of Israel. Okay. Now in the time of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that's when the tribes are split up, and he led Israel in a path of sin. Through he made 2 golden calves, one at Dan, the very, very northern extremity of Israel, and one at Bethel, very southern extremity of Israel. You notice Bethel over there on the dotted line, which is the border between Judah and Israel. You got roughly in the middle, there's Bethel, right on the border over there. So that's Israel. Then after Israel, we have we come over here to Judah. And by the way, when Jeroboam son of Nebat come to power, what he did, we changed the religion, he changed the priests, and he changed the feast days, and so the Levites were kicked out of office, the priests were kicked out of office, and he raised up people who were men of Belial, just corrupt people, and he made them priests and teachers of their so-called law instead. So the Levites and the priests, they went down south to Judah. So in Judah, you'd have the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and also the priests and Levites were down there too. They were part of them. All right, then we have Judah. Notice over here, Judah on the east side of the Dead Sea, and they never conquered the Philistines. The Philistines were always there. They always resisted Israel, and they were never conquered. Even in the time of David, they weren't conquered. They were subjugated. They were beaten to the point where Philistines were no more threat to Israel, but still, Israel never gained their land. So Judah, in the time of the divided kingdom, started off just south of in line with the top of the Dead Sea, go down south to Negeb Desert, and on the west to the land of Edom. And that's where basically their land was. So it's half of it fertile, half it desert. That's we have the tribe of Judah. All right, then comes Moab. And now these are the main nations in the Promised Land. Moab, you see over there, the Dead Sea, bottom right-hand side, the Dead Sea is Moab, and that's the land that God gave them, and unaffected by Israel when they come to the Promised Land, because Israel weren't allowed to touch Ammon or Moab or Edom. They were lands that are given to them by God as their inheritance. So there's Moab, and they remained subjugated under Israel many times. Even at the time of Ahab, later on in life, Moab used to give us over 120,000 sheep and different animals and everything to Israel as part of their the dues you have to pay every year. So Moab was subjugated to Israel, to Judah, often because they were ever proud and enemies of Israel, and so therefore they got themselves in trouble time and time again. Not the Ammonites. The Ammonites always fought and lost, but Moab fought and they subjugated, and they had to pay so much so much dues each year. All right, after Moab, we have Edom. Edom is to the south of the bottom of the Dead Sea. You see the top of Edom over there. It goes all the way down to the Gulf of Aqaba, and it's a very rocky, mountainous area with narrow pathways, full of cliffs that have been honeycombed with caves. And with Edom, you see photos of parts of Edom today, which is Jordan today, and they find they've carved themselves temples and dwelling places out of these caves in the rocks. So you have a great big massive cliff inside the big cave. On the outside, they'd carve themselves a face of a house, of a temple, whatever it may be. They go inside and they dwell inside there. Now, that's a very functional thing. You get down to Cooperative in Australia, they do the same thing basically. Now, they don't carve a nice frontage their home, but they might paint it. But they live in a cave. No need for air conditioning, and absolutely completely sealed from the outside elements, and they live in caves. Why? Because the elements outside are so hot that it's not worth trying to build something and air condition it and keep it maintained. Just live in a cave. So with the Edomites, many of them lived in caves in the rocks and the hills and everything, and they felt very safe because it's virtually impregnable. I mean, if you want to go and try and invade part of Edom, there's a very narrow path. You're going to go through one horse at a time. You can't go two horses at a time, just one, or one camel at a time, which means it's a bottleneck. And anyone could be a sitting duck for someone up on the cliff over there, a sitting duck as they come in one by one by one. So it's very difficult as a land to try and conquer, but still God told them they will be conquered. They will be conquered, definitely God told them that. So the Edomites were ever enemies of Israel, forever, ever. And Israel fought against them, beat them many, many times, and subjugated them, and put them under tribute many times, and they were off and under many times. Constant battle between Edomites and Israel and Judah, constantly. Then after this, we have, that's it, that's a divided kingdom. So they have their divided kingdom. Just keep that in mind, please. It's a very, very easy map to look at, an easy, I suppose, section to divide into, and that's where they ended up. So instead of having all the land from up over here, Euphrates River, all the way down over here, they ended up with just simply a portion up to about there. That's as far as they went. They lost all this extra land over here, the whole lot of it, because of their unfaithfulness to God. And also, this part, they lost the Philistines. They never got Phoenicia. Phoenicia was never part of their promised land anyway. So they missed off the land of the Philistines over here, and the part of Bashan, that half tribe of Manasseh got, that went too. So they lost the whole lot. Because God promised them that land was his land. They could only stay there on the condition they obeyed God. If they didn't, they would be kicked out. It's like you're renting someplace. You don't pay your rent, you're kicked out. So God told them, if you don't pay your rent as far as righteousness goes, I'll kick you out. Yeah.
Israel's a lot smaller now.
Where?
Now. Israel.
What about them?
The country Israel now.
It's smaller than that.
It's not that.
Oh no, it's much, much smaller. Yeah. Well I think I know.
Here looks about half the
That is much, much greater than what Israel is today. I think there's a map over here to about modern day Israel. They don't have the Gaza Strip. There's Israel today, roughly. That's Israel there. They have down in the Negev Desert, down the southern border down by here, Edrei. Then over here, all this area over here, they don't have. They have nothing across the east bank of the Jordan River, just a narrow strip over here. And over there, you've got the Gaza Strip they don't have, which is the Philistine area. They don't have. So what they have today is less than half of what they had back then. Less than half, yeah.
So will in the millennium, or before that, like in the tribulation period, will they have this? Will they have the whole thing again?
No. If you read Ezekiel, you find Ezekiel, the land of Israel goes from Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. And it's parallel blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Parallel blocks, all the same size exactly. Every tribe, same size block of land given. Same length, same width, every one. And they're parallel ones. Top one over here goes one like this.
So
That's how it's cut. That's in Ezekiel.
So Israel in the future, it won't be bigger than what it is now then?
Today, yeah, because today it's much, much smaller than what it was back then in ancient times, but it won't be as big as in ancient times. In ancient times, it crossed over the Jordan River. Now, when they came over here, God said their land was over here. Now, Gad and Reuben asked for land on that side. God gave it to them. But the promised land was here, not there. So in the millennium, that's the place. There's the border up over there, and that's all the land they have over there. So God never promised them a great, big, massive, America or Africa or Russia as far as land goes. No, just a small spot, because he was their inheritance, not land. Okay? All right, any other questions about that? You read through Ezekiel, the last chapters, and talks about the distribution of the land in the millennium, and you'll be surprised. You think, mate, that's it? That's it? Now, right smack dab in the middle, you have the temple, right smack dab in the middle. So you've got 6 tribes, temple, then you have the tribes underneath.
So during when Ezekiel was written, they had almost that all out there, or they had lost some to the Philistines by that point, but it would have been a lot larger.
Listen, there you have there, okay? When Ezekiel was written, this part over here was taken completely to Babylon. All you had was that part there left. That's all you had.
Right.
And the Babylonians would come down over here to conquer this part in the final battle with the Jerusalem. But all that part had been taken by Assyria. And then when Babylon conquered Assyria, they took all this part. Then this part about here in Jerusalem, the Babylonians left that there because the kings of Israel were subjugated to Babylon through Jehoiakim and Zechariah. But when Zedekiah. But when Zedekiah finally rebelled against Babylon, they came in over, took all this over. Yeah. So there was virtually nothing. And when Ezekiel wrote that this simply the Jews are back in the land, that have simply a small area over here where Jerusalem was the centre, and that's all they had. All the rest of the stuff, no, it's gone. You find when these Jews were taken to captivity in Assyria, the Assyrians then repopulated this place with Samaritans or with different tribes. They'd be called Samaritans later on. So north over here, Samaritans. Yeah, okay? So it's not they went from bad to worse. Where they are now, they're trying to get back to where they were before. They're trying to get back there. Very, very, very slow. Okay, any other question? All right, look about the grain production. When you're preparing for planting, they had to have the rains. The ground was so hard, they didn't have great big massive tractors and ploughs and equipment, just wooden implements and iron implements driven by an ox or something. So if the ground was hard, forget it. You can't do it. You can't do it. So to wait for the early rains, for October, November, to soften the earth, then they'd go and do their ploughing. Then you find the ploughs, because they're made of wood and iron and stuff like that, they weren't very, very strong. They'd have to just use these forms of implementation, just makeshift forms of implementation to try and dig the ground up. They'd have talk about ox goads and yokes that were made in order to keep animals together and keep animals on the right line. Animal use for ploughing, mainly you'd have the oxen, because they're big and they're strong and they're obedient and they're fast enough. They're not too fast. They're slow. They're steady. They can plough all day, no worries. Every now and then they might have an ass, or they might even have a donkey or a camel. But basically the ox was the main animal, and always team one animal with another the same size to keep it going straight. It's like having a car where your wheel alignment's out. Let go of the steering wheel, and it goes this way. Well, so to keep the wheel alignment straight on the animals, they have them both the same strength. Soil preparation, all stones were moved. Now, if you look in the area of Israel, like in Lebanon, rocks everywhere. I mean, you find people making massive stone walls. Where do you get rocks from? The ground. Because they're everywhere. You find in some places down in Goulburn, when I was over there, you go on some properties, rocks. You get all your free rocks to build yourself a stone wall through just by going there, driving on someone's farm. Hey mate, can I have some rocks? Go for your life, please take the whole lot. Instead of going to a nursery and paying for them, just go to a farm and pick them up, put them back in your truck and drive back and build yourself a wall. So in Lebanon and in Israel, a lot of rocks everywhere. So they'd get the stones, remove all the stones from the ground. They build their walls out of them for protection, to keep their lands and their gardens protected. And also they'd be able to put their furrows through. They never used fertiliser normally. It wasn't done. The hills were made of limestone. That in itself fertilised the land. Also, you find the droppings of animals were used as part of fertiliser. They wouldn't go ahead and fertilise the lands. You find when trees drop their leaves, drop their fruit, that stays over there, that'll fertilise the trees. So like self-fertilising, you might say. And also when they had their different properties, they might farm this part over here this year, then farm that part that year, then farm that part that year. And every 7 years, every 6 years, leave it vacant 1 year. That in itself will put nutrients back into the soil again. And so when they're going to plough the following year, all that growth goes back in the ground again and becomes as fertiliser. So much wisdom in what God has said about Israel in keeping to his laws. He never told them all the benefits of his laws. He just simply had them there. So if you obeyed him, you got the benefits too. Without even knowing the benefits, you had them. When it comes sowing the seed, obviously it's going to be broadcast. That's it, broadcast and stuff like that. When you broadcast, like we told in the parable of the sower, the wind comes along and blows some seeds where it's not supposed to go. On hard ground, some seeds go on ground that's very, very rocky, not prepared, and some goes on ground full of thorns. Yeah, you can't help that, because when you throw it, the wind comes along and whoosh, goes over here, goes over there. You can't help that. It's going to happen. And basically sowing of seeds like that, you find enemies of crops are always around. Well, something about a farm always kept you on your knees because there's so many things that mess up a production that year. Obviously, there's birds that will come and eat the grain. Then there's always weeds that grow without any trouble whatsoever. Then fire comes along. The worst thing was locusts, because when they come, nothing will be left. Nothing. I saw a documentary once about locust plagues in Africa, and it starts off with little butterflies. Then a few more join, a few more join, a few more join. Next thing you know, it's like a great big massive cloud, about 10, 15, 20 feet high, for as far as you can see, for kilometres everywhere, just going this white cloud everywhere. And when you come, there's green before it. When it finishes, it's brown. And there's no way of stopping it. There's no way of stopping it. You can't spray, you can't go bang, 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 you can't burn, you can't do anything. Because it's for miles and miles and miles and miles in width and everything. So when they come, it's like death coming to your land. So you sit back and just you say goodbye. Say goodbye. That's what you can do. You can't do anything. Then there comes thieves who come and steal your grain production after you've gone and got your grain and stored your grain, or maybe there's sheaves left in the field, they'll come and steal the sheaves. So while you're making a sheaf over here and a sheaf over here and a sheaf over there, they come behind you and stealing. So that's one of the problems you have. Very important that the different crops they use is barley. That's like a poor man's crop. It's like a crop on poor soils. You have wheat, which is the main type of crop and everything. When they have corn, they're just talking about some sort of seed grain. Not really talking about corn. So in the Bible, corn isn't really corn like we have today. It's more like a seed grain. Let's see. When it comes to hospitality, people are allowed to pluck grain and eat in the fields, like they could pluck fruit and pluck grapes and whatever's on the fruit trees, but they weren't allowed to cart it away. They weren't allowed to do that. They're supposed to leave it there for people to eat who are going through, also for the poor, that they'll be able to have food to eat. And corners of the field weren't to be harvested, left for the poor also. So a lot of provision for the poor were made. So those people who had farms always considered the fact that travellers need to go through and tread upon all their ground and just hopefully make one little pathway through, not 50 pathways. They could eat as they went through and no problems. Eat off the trees they went through, no problems. They weren't allowed to pick it, pack it and take with them. Okay? Harvesting of grain done by sickle. Very, very slow threshing type of job, but that's the way it goes. You couldn't do anything more than that. When they come to thresh the grain, they have different instruments, and sometimes they have oxes walk over the grain and grain stalks that separates the grain from the stalk. They get the stalks, chuck them away, then they get the grain, throw them up over there, and they drop down into the sieve, and hopefully the wind blows away the chaff, and the grain is caught over here. That is a very slow process, but it's all they had back then. And effective. As far as they're concerned, it worked. It's not our fancy way of doing things today, but when you think about people did this, and their farms weren't so massively big, they did it for their own self, for their flour, their own bread, and also for the sale of what was left over. Some people had their own little farm just for themselves. Some people, great big massive farms for production of grain and for selling to other people. The grain can be stored in earthenware jars and underground cisterns and barns, garners. Or in the time of Joseph, they were built special warehouses for where they store grains. They got for 7 years of good harvesting, and they store them. Then they'd open up these things. They were absolutely weatherproof and start giving out to people for the next 7 years to eat. So in the time of Joseph, they had to be completely weatherproof and sealed off properly to keep the grain from spoiling and keep different insects and mice from going in there and eating them, because mice love grain with a passion. They love grain. Okay? All right, that's briefly the grain production, briefly divided kingdom. Just to give you an overview of different things about geography and customs. Any questions? Anything at all? All right, this is lecture 21. It goes to 40, so there's only there's 20 more to go. If we can meet some other time next year, we can do a couple lessons at a go and finish the whole lot in 10 weeks maybe, or even under that. There's no need to, we do, half an hour at a time? And half an hour just drawn out. Well, if you did 1 hour at a time, hey, you get much more done. And plus, I don't spend time with going through all the scriptures because otherwise it'd take even longer. So verses are there. So all the notes are complete. So you go through the notes, they're complete. I just present you a brief version of what's in the notes. Okay? So if you want to get more stuff, go in the notes, get into the textbook you've got, and you'll be surprised how much blessing you get. Now, the book regarding Edersheim, hard yakka to read through it, but very profitable. Yes?
Did you say you were teaching this at Bible College next year?
Next year, I'll be teaching geography, Bible geography, as a special lecture in the end of, beginning of term 2.
Do you know what day at all?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
All three?
See, it's going to be 1 week special lectures.
Ah,
Tuesday, 4 hours. Wednesday, 4 hours. Thursday, 4 hours. So I'll get my notes. I'll get rid of the customs. I'll just put geography over there, and I'll put them in an order that is set according to historical chronology, and have it all set that way.
so that's just going to be 1 week next year?
Just 1 week next year, whole geography. And I'm going to also go into archaeology and do a small portion over there too in archaeology.
That sounds good.
All right? That'll be. I've already got down that you have the first term, then you have 2 weeks break, then back to college. Well, the first week back to college is going to be geography.
Could you do just that, like sign up for just that course, per se?
Yeah, you can do that. People can enrol just to do that one course. Yeah, and I'll try and get it much more elaborate. But this is as I'm typing this thing up and presenting it, I'm giving it to you. So this is like a dummy run, okay? Not to dummies, no, a dummy run. Okay? All right, let's have a word of prayer. Thank you, Father, for the opportunity to continue in this study and the fellowship, Lord, through the looking into your word and getting a visual, Lord, of basically the land of Israel, how the Jews, Lord, lived over there, the circumstances they were under, and how it affects our understanding of your word. Thank you in Christ's name we pray. Amen.